Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you for joining this learning experience brought to you by CloudBees. My name is Cody, and welcome back to Techstrong Learning. Before we dive into things, I do have just a couple of notes I'd like to review with everyone. First off, we are recording our session today. So if you miss any of our discussion, if you'd like to watch again at a later time, or if you'd like to share this with your team, we'll be sending you an email that will provide access to the on-demand recording, and we'll be sending that as soon as we possibly can after we conclude this live session today. Now, if you'd like to get involved, there are a couple of ways to do so. The first option is to use the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So when you find that chat tab, I'd like you to let us know from where in the world you're joining from today. Seeing Mexico City, Finland, Spain, Greece, Germany, Honduras, New York. We've got a worldwide audience, so thank you all for joining us today. Now, if you have specific questions, we do want you to submit those to the Q&A tab on the right side of that chat section, as I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions, and we want to be sure that we're organized and are able to address them as best as we can. So please do send those into that Q&A tab for us. Additionally, if you jump to the handout section, you'll see there is a resource there for you, so feel free to grab that. And I will be selecting 2 of our most engaged attendees today to be receiving a $50 Amazon gift card. So ways to become eligible are to send in chats, questions, and of course, fill out our post-webinar survey that is in the handout section as well. So our topic today is the rise of platform engineering. And I'm joined today by Robert Boyd, VP of SaaS Engineering at CloudBees. And we're also joined today by Jason Mimick, Senior Partner Solutions Architect for DevOps at AWS. So Robert and Jason, thank you both so much for joining us today. Robert, would you mind taking us into our presentation today?
Yeah, so let's just cover through the agenda real quick for everybody. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're talking about the rise of platform engineering. We're going to give an platform engineering overview. We're going to talk a little bit about developer experience and some of the practical pitfalls and best practices that we're seeing across the industry today. And then we'll give a quick intro to the CloudBees platform and how you can get started. And with that, I will hand over to Jason from AWS.
Thanks a lot, Robert. And thanks everybody for joining today. So to kind of get started here, we thought we'd talk about some big trends that we're seeing this year. In 2024, cloud computing still continues to grow. Customers are asking for the ability to manage their entire cloud footprints much more effectively. And these are some major trends we're seeing across all kinds of customers. I mean, organizations that started with cloud native footprints, which there's not that many, but we've been in the cloud, using the cloud for a while. So there are some teams working to move to the cloud, as well as a lot of you out there probably trying to manage hybrid environments due to like regulatory or your business needs. So the first trend we're seeing is, the market for serverless and containers really continues to gain ground. Teams often need various deployment models. And solutions like AWS Lambda and Step Functions, Amazon Fargate, or EKS offer teams like different options to run containerized solutions with different workload needs. Or maybe you're using things like VMware, Windows, or other self-managed platforms. They're leveraging EC2. But the ability to visualize these complex containerized environments is really a challenge for a lot of AWS customers. We continue to see DevOps practices spread throughout organizations, and it's not really just for the devs or the ops team. It's going across your entire organization. Security, compliance, executive, support teams are all leaning in across many customers. Having a shared view of your entire technology footprint from on-prem to the cloud is an incredibly powerful tool for your organization. And finally, costs. Economics are like completely on everyone's mind. daily. They've been for forever, even more so now than ever. But being able to balance the security and reliability along with cost and optimization are a real challenge. And those are top priorities here at Amazon. So these are some of the main trends that we're seeing and some of the ways that AWS, especially working with partners like CloudBees, can help you meet your needs in these areas. So how do you really get started? Well, the best way, especially with a big problem, is to start with the real problem, which means know your customers, right? To do these things successful and build a successful platform, you have to know your customers. And in many cases, it's developers, it's security people, it's different folks in your organization, but engagement with them is key. All the way to FinOps and across your entire organization. You want to understand their exact needs, remove tedious obstacles, things that are time people have to do over and over again for no reason that could be automated, and make it a lot easier for people to find answers. These are the kinds of things that really successful customers using CloudBees and AWS are doing. So in order to have a fundamental understanding of where things fit in here, let's talk through some of the concepts. Number one, level setting on what is DevOps. So, like, how did we get to platform engineering? Well, what is DevOps? Well, DevOps is not a role, but it is a way of working, a cultural movement, and design for shared ownership and collaboration to achieve a common outcome. Platform engineering takes this a step further, adding to DevOps common service across the entire enterprise with abstractions to key infrastructure and tools that eliminate complexity and facilitate rapid adoption by the development teams. Platform engineering is about driving efficiencies within DevOps. The two are complementary, but required to get things done faster, at scale, and cost effective. We can go to the next slide. So second, that's DevOps. So what is platform engineering? It's level set on what that means to us. You really need to start by defining the mission and what your platform engineering team's goals and products are. This is a core need as you continue down this journey. Your goals and mission should strive to abstract complexity and environment details away from users, unburdening them and enabling teams to self-service and innovate at scale when they're ready. For an example, mission statement for your platform engineering team could be: platform engineering furthers DevOps by providing common services across the enterprise with abstractions to key infrastructure and tools that eliminate complexity and facilitate rapid adoption by the development team. But it's a balancing act, and as you try to really apply this in real life, I was kind of talking some more academic things there, but like, how do I really apply this to my business needs and what I need, like in practical terms? That's a little tricky. But the first thing you want to think is it's not really shifted left anymore. It's like I said before, it's applying these principles across your entire organization. The first step, and Robert, like, if you have any input on any of this, please feel free to chime in. But one of the first things you need to start with is identifying your core use cases and business needs, work back from your customers, find the right balance of tools to meet those needs. For example, some teams need an entire Kubernetes cluster. Other teams just want to run a container on a serverless for some service that's running. Others need other services, and you need to support all these different use cases. So identifying those and picking successful ones to start with is really key. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Robert?
Yeah, I would strongly suggest, and we'll talk about this in the upcoming slides as well, is really consider all of the personas that are in play as you think about this evolution. I see many organizations developing automation around existing workflows. And this is a really good opportunity to take a step back, reimagine how some of your teams work today, optimize some of those flows, and then hopefully yield greater efficiency as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step, make sure you start off with some good business problems. Work back from your customer. The second step is to make sure that you start off with a solid foundation. And that means partnering with someone like AWS and CloudBees to allow your organization to quickly scale and implement all these needs. The more capabilities you have to visualize things will allow your teams to get things done much quicker, solve problems, launch new products, as well as drill into costs and take care of your security and compliance needs. So it helps your entire business across all of those technology needs. Any thoughts on that one, Robert?
No, I think this makes sense, and it's a great pivot point to transition over and actually talk about one of those key personas within the SDLC, the developer. As you mentioned, Jason, it is no secret that our developers are faced with faster moving security issues. They need to move through their workflows much faster. And we've had a shift left and shift right in a lot of our security postures as well. So really today, meet your developers with the tools that they're working in today. Recent studies from Atlassian and GitHub cite 76% of developers are happier when they have that greater autonomy, flexible tooling, and are not forced into a tool set. And this is a key paradigm within the new CloudBees platform, where we embrace, we don't replace. We provide first-class citizens like orchestration, but we also allow customers to bring in other orchestrators such as Jenkins and others into the environment. Allow your developers the autonomy to be able to experiment, to bring in the tools that they want to make themselves most efficient within a framework of control. And today we hear most of that spoken about as golden paths, etc. The other paradigm that is starting to shift into the market and we're hearing a lot about is IDPs, our internal developer platforms. And probably most commonly, we hear about Backstage in the industry today. Now, there's a couple of ways to get to an IDP. Next slide, please. You can either build from open source or internally grown, or you can work with partners such as AWS, CloudBees, and others who have commercial solutions providing many of these capabilities. So really, what is an IDP and what are the use cases that we're seeing? One of the most common use cases is blurring the lines between development and operations. Another one is around developer efficiency. So many years ago, I was involved with an organization that was evaluating new developers coming into the organization. And the hypothesis was if that developer had a tech radar to inform their open source choices, if they had code scaffolding which informed their service patterns, if they had golden paths or templates that allowed them to document or pick up the operational rigor of logging and monitoring, then that new developer coming into an organization on Monday could have a hello world application in production by Friday with a full operational rigor. So there's lots of benefits in IDPs. I'm seeing it exposed for pipeline metrics and pipeline runtimes. And this is an area that we're looking at very, very closely as the market evolves. Next slide. So what are some of the common pitfalls there? Well, my first suggestion would be the most successful companies have treated IDP investments very much like a full product development. They've amassed product managers, product owners, operations, support, marketing, and the entire aspect of the business to really imagine or reimagine their operational processes. Very commonly, when we start such these initiatives from a technology perspective, we start out in one area or a group of teams and then grow from there. The investments over time, whether you do open source or a commercial solution, will greatly change. And IDP investment, I think a parallel is to wiki investment 15 years ago. There is still a lot of content that your teams will have to contribute to an IDP. Things like your Swagger docs, templates, best practices, and so on. So don't underestimate that investment over time. Over time, as you grow adoption, the demand for IDPs and your centralized platform team will far outpace the supply. And that really brings in an important point about outreach and socialization. It is really critical that IDP development over time becomes a bottoms-up and a top-down rollout for several ways. Because if your adoption is successful, if you are able to grow that up to good adoption within your overall organization, at some point you're going to find that the quantity of the engineering team is fairly large supporting that product. And over time, I've seen it commonly that CFOs or other areas of the business have asked questions about the strategy of that approach. So it is manageable. My one recommendation is focus really much on that product flow. Focus very much on the strategy and the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. And also really form those hypotheses and socialize the results really early on. It is also really, really important to keep your developers or any other key personas centric to your entire process. You've got to trust those developers as though they were paying customers within your organization. That trust is not earned, it's not assumed. And developers are opinionated. Make sure you hear their feedback. You have mechanisms to wrap that into your cycle, and you can make those enhancements as you go.
Yeah. Hey, Robert, I was just going to say, like, there were some really good points that you made there about, the benefits of IDPs, not just for like serving your apps, but documenting them. Between Swagger and things like that, I can't tell you how many development projects I've worked on that have gotten delayed because the docs team is like completely separate from the whole process. And not to mention the supportability and maintainability of that when inevitable bug fixes come. So that is a huge time saver, getting everyone on the same page and having like run books and things like that to solve those problems.
Yeah, I agree, Jason. If you think about just that use case that I provided, and you think about a new developer coming into the organization, if these did not exist, the way that they would generally do that is through pairing or meetings. And what I'm starting to see actually in some of the studies coming through post-COVID, if I take the Zen Hub study as an example, we're now seeing engineers post-COVID back in meetings over 50% of their time. So it is key, it is critical, and a key aspect. Let's jump on slides. I think we covered that one largely as well. Okay, so how does CloudBees help? So first and foremost, I want to just give a big shout out to the entire SaaS team at CloudBees. We launched the new DevSecOps platform in November, and it was a huge effort by the entire team. So thank you, everybody, for your hard work on that announcement. The platform itself is a SaaS-based platform, can also be deployed into an AWS VPC. It relies on actions-based DSL. It offers the ability to generate templates or golden paths as some of the concepts that we've spoken today, as well as some unique capabilities to bring in pre-configured actions to actually share out or provide access to specific infrastructure types, whether it be EKS or AWS Fargate or others, to those specific teams rather than trading tickets. Next slide. So the platform is available online. You can go to cloudbees.io and there's lots of information there on the platform. You can sign up for free and try. And all of this is made available through the CloudBees partnership with AWS. There are links coming up to the platform so you can actually try it, as well as a platform engineering study that we commissioned last year as well. So, and with that, please feel free to snap a link, or the slides will also be made available afterwards. And I want to thank everybody for your time today. We'll start to transition over to questions and answers.
And love to hear your if anybody out there has specific problems, questions, and interested in an open dialogue, we're here to talk.
Perfect. So I am seeing a couple questions roll in. I'll go ahead and put this one up on the screen. How do platform engineers ensure scalability and optimal performance as user bases grow? Are there specific strategies or technologies that prove effective?
Okay, so I will start. Jason, please feel free to jump in. So the way that we've actually approached this at CloudBees is really to plan in for our upper water level of scale early on. Now, this also starts to bring in architectural philosophies. So we plan for multi-region resiliency. We plan for resiliency in some services. And then we scale out each of the layers of our platform independently to meet that user demand. So that's going to vary depending on what you're building or what you're operating and your overall composition, how much code is moving through the platform. But really, it comes down to, in many cases, a lot of the abstractions that our teams generate. And it's these abstractions within your tool chain to infrastructure or other third-party tools. And putting the work in up front has really been one of the most beneficial ways that I've seen where organizations have fewer scaling challenges on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely second all of that. The other thing too that came to mind is like thinking about your core services, especially like how you manage identity management, security scanning, things like this. Like some of those core cross-cutting services really making sure that's part of your strategy is going to help you scale, because you really don't want to launch all this stuff and then realize it needs, I don't know, SOX 2 HIPAA compliance or something like that after it's out. Like, so you have to like think of those things as well as just strategic, sort of top and bottom approach kind of a thing.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Moving right along, Sharik asks, how can we make sure platform engineering is not a new silo, but work cohesively with DevOps?
So for me, platform engineering essentially is an evolution of DevOps. I think the early stages of DevOps, most of our engineers were focused on the nuts and bolts of actually building pipelines and building some of these platforms. The industry has moved on a lot. There are much more variety in the marketplace, more solutions as well. But it's really a journey, really looking at where your customers are having pain points or friction points, and then thinking about abstractions to enable them, either through self-service or working through your platform team. But really, in many, many cases, more and more developers are asking for that self-service opportunity. And that is going to be a key part of how the DevOps teams transition to platform teams. They start to think about managing their services like a product and treat it with the full rigor that comes with.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a good question, but it's like kind of the quick answer is, if you ask that, you're doing it wrong. Like, so you don't want to create a new silo. Like, it's an evolution. It's part of how the DevOps team should be using the platform at the same time. So don't set it up that way, like, for sure, because that's basically just going to recreate the same problems.
Yeah, and most commonly, just to piggyback on that comment, I've seen those silos continue to build, especially around IDPs, where different lines of business may not be able to fully align on standards or technologies or approaches. So therefore, each line of business then ends up with their own silo. And over time, that is just technical debt that builds up.
Yeah, and it can be like super challenging, especially at big companies, for sure. So and at smaller companies. So the one thing I would say is try to find champions across those different teams. Leaders in those teams, when you're working on these efforts, make sure you get buy-in from those stakeholders, and that's going to help you be successful. Because if you connect with those leaders, they're going to have good people on their team. That's going to help adoption and help you be successful.
All right, thank you both. Gerald asks our next question: what are the top things developers have asked for in an IDP? So those champions that have taken on the cause early, what are some things that maybe they're calling out as ways to improve?
So the key things that I'm hearing developers call out is a means to rationalize their open source strategy. Which open source products should they move to? Should they adopt? Which ones have passed through the center and maybe starting to phase out? And the bureaucracy that basically comes with licensing and open source. That's the first one. The second one is codified service patterns or designs, so that developers can choose from a toolbox of design patterns that architects have approved and generally aligned to. Third one is essentially around golden paths or templates. So that could be related to pipelines, pipeline flows, security scans, required scans, policies, All of those aspects that come through, and then that last mile of operations and support, documentation, run books, and potentially even giving operations some visibility into pipelines. So those are the main use cases that I've seen so far asked by our customers. Jason, I don't know if you've seen anything else.
I mean, nothing is really coming to mind. Only like everything you said is absolutely being asked for. And the only thing on top of that is that all those different players there and their different needs, they all want to be able to access the same system, and they want to have the control to manage their teams and hire new people and give them the right access and have that fine-grained control. So it's the interoperability between all those different needs that I think that the unified platform can really help alleviate any friction.
All right. So thank you for letting us know what these developers are looking for whenever they're improving on an IDP. But I know we've got to start somewhere. So I'm going to pop Victoria's question up here on the screen. What would be the minimal setup or requirements for a software developer company to start using an IDP to deliver valuable software? So how do we get started? What are the basics?
So the basics generally, I think the most common way that the companies are getting started nowadays, or at least evaluating, is through Backstage, which was an open source release from Spotify. From there, Backstage has the ability to integrate with a variety of different things around your enterprise, whether that be your authentication, your directory, some pipelines, etc., your source control. And then the other elements are starting to think about how you're actually going to categorize your catalog. So as you bring in endpoints and various aspects of your infrastructure and you make those visible, actually planning through how you're going to structure that and how it fits in or some of the key areas.
All righty. We've still got plenty of questions here, so I'm just ordering them a little bit for us. How do you recommend balancing the need between self-service and building your own IDP?
Well, I mean, my answer, I'll give a quick one and then Robert go for it. But I was just going to say first off, look at your problem and what the needs are, and try to apply these principles to that need, and with the understanding of what your pipeline and your other needs are, and just start there and pick tooling that allows you to expand and grow. You might not need all the features of CloudBees or AWS today, but for example, however, picking a tool that's going to allow you to scale and grow is really a key thing. I wouldn't pick the latest hot thing on GitHub necessarily to start off.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, one of the key areas is really start to think about when you're building your own, is it a strategic enabler for your business? Is it core? And in many cases, I would say a lot of companies would say that tool chains and some of the SDLC aspects are means to an end. And that might be an area where if you buy more, you assume those core capabilities via vendor and you get your integrations, that starts to change the investment level, generally gets more efficiency, and you're also then got the benefits of a large development team from that vendor already behind you.
Yeah, and think about what your core business is. It's probably not maintaining a source control system or something like this, right? So spend your quality time on the things that matter to your business.
All right, thank you both. Moving right along into Abhishek's question. Our company has multiple lines of businesses utilizing various tools and technologies, but the vision of our CTO is to consolidate those as a primary focus. How do platform engineers approach the integration of various technologies and ensure interoperability, especially in multi-platform ecosystems?
Okay, I can take this one. Abhishek, this is actually a path that I've walked myself in my career, and I've seen this challenge myself. So I would suggest that full product approach where you start to see challenges like this. This is a great opportunity to link your platform engineer initiatives to your CTO vision. And generally, that's where you start to drive more of a top-down approach. Now, as your product team engages, you're probably going to start to look at those different lines of business within the company and the requirements. Some may overlap, some may not. And then really it becomes a prioritization exercise as you go through that. You're actually speaking to one of the early pain points that I mentioned in the meeting. And that is that demand very quickly is going to outpace supply. That prioritization combined with continue to socialize your wins and that outreach and education as you go is paramount to bringing this together at all levels of the company.
Yeah, completely agree. Don't think I could said it better.
All right. Well, it looks like we have 2 final questions left at the moment. So if you have any final questions, do send them in. We've got a little bit of time to squeeze them in. But moving on to Detlef's question, do you prefer to redesign a service app despite of trying to transfer into a cloud? Sorry, I think I butchered the reading of that. Does this one make sense to you guys?
Yeah, it does. So should you redesign it or just migrate? Good question. There's not a single answer to that. The ability to migrate in 2024 is a lot different than it was a while ago. So unless you have to pull it apart, I would investigate the migration to get your business there and then pull it apart has sort of been a more common strategy of late. Before migration was so easy, everyone was pulling things apart and having to rebuild all these things as microservices. But I would just look at your options and understand which one's going to get you the most business value. Definitely do not recook the sausage just to put it in another oven. Just try to put it up there first if you can, but it might not be depending on your exact situation. But that's sort of a pragmatic approach that I would recommend. I don't know, Robert, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think you touched on the same suggestion as me. Really, you've got to look at your application portfolio and the requirements on that application. As you go towards the cloud, you may start to see things like state popping up or replication across regions, messaging, etc. Become new things to deal with. I'm also a huge fan of putting in APIs to protect and future-proof to give flexibility as part of a migration. So using patterns like the strangler pattern around interfaces or a shim layer in that gives us the flexibility to change a database in future. Those sorts of approaches as you go. But it really comes down to the business requirements on your application. A focus on value, because a rewrite to produce the same product doesn't really produce significant user value, and then move through from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Great point on. I mean, that's kind of what the IDP tenets are about abstraction. So think about it. Like if I'm going to move a traditional client server app into the web that needs a database, right, into the cloud, and I decide, oh, I'm going to use service for a cloud service for the database. Having a shim in there can allow you to take that same application, the same drivers, everything, and plug it into that database. And if for some reason it's not exactly performant or there's better technologies, you have a point in there that you can go sort of insert things and make course changes. That's a key thing to think about. Like it's strategically migrating, but also evolving.
So it looks like we are at our final question, guys. So I'm gonna pop it up on the screen, but I think it's a softball that we've teed up for you here. Is the CloudBees IDP free to start? I'd like to see how it can be used in a small team and perhaps how it scales. How do we get started, guys?
All right, so the CloudBees platform is free to start. It just takes a sign up with your GitHub or Google IDs, and off you go. That same platform is available in a SaaS variant that's perfect for small teams, but also meets the needs of large enterprises as well. So getting started on www.cloudbees.io and signing up there is the best way to start.
All right, and I've officially lied to you guys. We got one more question, but it essentially comes down to: do you see platform engineering teams buying or building more often than not?
Well, I'll say it's a bit of both, because if you're using an IDP, you're gonna be building. Like there's builders around the whole ecosystem. So a lot of I don't want to. A lot of customers choose to buy a big piece of that work because they know that their day to day is going to be working on that. And they want to improve that efficiency. So it's sort of like, do you want to do a bunch of work before you get to work, or do you want to just get to work?
Yeah, I see two trends that are putting pressure on platform teams that I think influences that decision fairly heavy. The first one is speed to value. So if you're building from open source or building your own, it's generally going to take longer to actually see those outcomes than a commercial product. And then second one is really about the needs of your development community. In most large organizations, that demand is going to far outpace your supply. So do you want to focus on solving those real problems in the integrations for your developers and enabling them to be the most productive? Or do you want to build the car that you're driving? That's really the question, I think, for everybody on the call today.
Yep.
All right, well, guys, we're going
exactly.
to wrap.
Great point. You don't want to drive the carburetor.
Awesome.
You can't.
Well, that does lead us here to the end of our session. I did want to pop up this QR code slide one more time for you guys and for our audience. And of course, I do want to return the floor to the both of you if there is anything you'd like to leave us with before we close things out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to thank everybody for their time today, and look forward to seeing everybody again.
Likewise. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Cody. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Of course. Well, Robert and Jason, thank you both so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. So
Likewise.
Before
Thanks.
I release our audience, just a couple of final remarks. Today's session was recorded, and we will be sending you that recording via email as soon as we close out. But you'll also find the recording living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars. I'll be contacting 2 of our most engaged attendees to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you for your chats and for your questions. If you'd like to still become eligible, there is the post-webinar survey pinned to the top of the chat, as well as there in the handout section. We would love to hear your thoughts about our program today. I'd like to thank CloudBees for sponsoring our program. And to everyone here, thank you so much for attending. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and we hope to see you at a future Techstrong Learning Experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect. Thanks again, Jason and Robert.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye.